you do get called forward, finally, you're going to go, I get why I had to be in training for 18 years. We're doing something really big, really powerful, and really profound. Now I feel like it's good. It's really good that I've been on the sidelines. Life had a plan. And whilst my conscious mind may have kicked and screamed and cried and, why is it taking so long? Why haven't I been called forward yet? The deeper part of me is like, just be patient, woman. Like, just chill out. There's a bigger picture going on. You're doing a great job. Just breathe. Nothing you have experienced, and this goes for everybody, right? I'm not just saying this for me. I'm saying this for you. I'm saying this for everybody. Everything you have gone through is still part of you. There is nothing you have experienced. There's nothing that you have done that has gone to waste. It will all be utilized. It will all be called into action the second, and it may just be this, the second both you and the world are ready for who you came here to be at your full potential. Because you have to be prepared for that, and the people have to be prepared for that.
In talking about the game, as you were speaking, it reminded me also that maybe there's also this possibility that maybe you're not meant to be on the field. Because if you look back, some of the best coaches and managers of the greatest sports teams in the world, they might not have been the best players.
Right.
But they somehow understand the game. They may not be able to. They may also have great skill and ability as well. But often these people, maybe they just skip. You don't need to be in the game necessarily, and that's very generalized. I'm talking because obviously you're going to want to play. You're going to be on in the field at times in different areas of life. But maybe you are exactly where you need to be right now, and to play in the field might not be part of it right now.
Right. If we look at the game as more metaphorical in that way, then I can absolutely get on board with that understanding. I'll mirror that in a different metaphor. I've been thinking about doctors and nurses in a hospital setting because I'm watching a drama series about like a house show or a Grey's Anatomy, but a different one. So I've been thinking about this same idea, but in the field of a hospital. And when I'm watching this drama series, there's many different characters. You have your CEOs, you have your board members, you have people who are responsible for HR, PR, everything that comes with setting up that system. You have the clients who come into the hospital, and you have your surgeons. Now, from watching that and looking at all those different characters, it's become increasingly obvious to me that I want to be in the OR. I'm a surgeon. That's my favorite place to be. I don't need to be the CEO. And this is a conversation that even happens in the series because the CEO ends up being a surgeon. And he's always going backwards and forwards between, well, do I want to be the CEO? But I'm a surgeon, but I love being a surgeon. So even he has his own evolution in this. But for me, watching that, I know that my passion lies in the OR. My favorite thing to do is have people come in, and I've got all my tools and techniques. I have all my different knives and my different, in the medical field, they have all their different trinkets that they use to help people heal. And so it just became very obvious to me, I don't need to build this building. I don't want to build the building. I don't need to be the CEO. I'm not even that interested in HR or PR or any of those things. My genius and my gift and my joy and my passion is in the OR. And obviously without the hospital, or without the surgeons, there is no hospital. So they are simultaneously lead characters, but also not the owner or the CEO or the co-founder. But without the CEO and the co-founder, the hospital ceases to run. So we all have this role to play. And if in the metaphor of the game, a surgeon is the person on the sidelines helping the athlete before the athlete gets out onto the field, then I may never need to get on that field because it's just not where I belong. So, in that case, yes, I fully understand what you're saying there. And I do feel that when all of us find that place we're meant to be and we're really working in that role, and again, I don't think this is a fault of your own if you haven't found this yet, because we are a global family working towards alignment. And sometimes you think, well, I'm not aligned, it's me. No, the whole family is still growing and evolving. But I feel like when people start to find their place and it starts to all come online, you will feel like you're playing the game you're meant to be playing, right? You've shown up, you're there, and maybe your game is the coach on the sidelines, or whatever part of it is. Maybe you're the audience, because that also needs to exist, or maybe you're the quarterback. It doesn't matter. But when you're in your right place, when that finally happens, it is so beautiful. In Chinese medicine, they call it Jing Shen. They say when the heart and the kidney are aligned, which is the feeling of, I know who I am, I know why I'm here, and I'm doing what I came to do. And that is such a beautiful space to be in. But I don't think it's just about you. I think it's about a whole system starting to work itself together.
How can people tap more into understanding their particular place?
It's a huge question that you just asked. And I'm going to need to answer that by saying there are different areas that you need to go into in your life. So I'm going to run through some of these areas, because when you start to understand that there's different ways to ask that question and there's different things to do in order to uncover that question, it might bring a lot of clarity to people. So this comes from integral theory, which I deeply love as a roadmap for living, a holistic, whole, complete
life. Is that Ken
life.
Wilber's?
Yeah, Ken Wilber's integral theory. I love learning the bodies of work of many people, and Ken Wilber is one of those people. So, you have your waking up work, which is your transcendental meditation path, or your transcendental path, where you are coming to have those beautiful experiences of felt oneness, of connection with spirit, of source. It's experiential. There's a lot of pathways that push people in that direction. And you can get to know yourself a little bit in that direction. Now, some people would say this is the totality of all life. All you need to do is transcend everything else, transcend the ego, connect with oneness, and you will have that answer. And I completely disagree. I believe you have a very, very, very small part of that answer. You will get to the point where you realize, I am one with all things. Now, that is a truth about you that will help you understand yourself, but it's only a very small part of the truth about you, because it doesn't answer, what food do you like? What career do you like? What's your passion? Where should you live in the world? What clothes should you wear? Which is also a part of this investigation. So then there's many other ways. Another thing that we really need to be engaged in, if we want to uncover who we are and why we're here, is shadow work. I mean, this is an entire field of conversation. But if we don't engage in any type of shadow work, we will never have any clues. Well, we'll have clues, but we'll never have a deep, clear idea of ourselves. And, we go all the way back to Freud in this work, and then Jungian psychology, and then many other people who've come from that field. But because of the way we psychologically set ourselves up through the trauma and the socialization process, we become fragmented. And we disown so much of ourselves, both what we perceive to be ugly or bad, but also what we perceive to be beautiful, depending on your society, depending on your type of conditioning, depending on your parents. We push all of that obviously into the subconscious, create the identity we think we need to be in order to be safe. And then we try and figure out who we are by only thinking about this. We try and look to this to give us those answers, and it can't, because it's such a limited part of ourselves. So we got to go back in, and we got to find these parts, and we got to reclaim them all. And as we reclaim them, on the other side of that reclamation is where we start having realization. Oh my God, this is who I am. Oh my God, I don't actually like that thing. I only did that thing because it was a adaptive behavioral pattern that was getting my needs met. But that's not who I am. I didn't come here to do that. I didn't come here to be this. I didn't come here to think that. That's not even my belief system anymore. So as you do the shadow work, you start to become more and more and more integral in yourself. And what's hilarious about this is, as those realizations come, they are simultaneously like an aha moment and a deep feeling of, I always knew that. My God, I just didn't give myself permission to admit that is who I am. That is who I am. So this is a piece of that. Simultaneously, if you're not engaged in any type of study, how are you ever going to figure out what you love? So actually getting engaged in life, learning about yourself, studying, researching, learning things, is also going to give you feedback that you need to have. Other piece of this, I'm running through it quickly, is you've got to open your heart, because your heart also has information, obviously. I mean, you can transcend the self and go into the oneness of the universe, but you're not going to get the deep, unique quality of you in that. You'll get ultimate truth that all people experience, but it's not going to give you your uniqueness. As the heart opens and you start to feel that, you're starting to feel your own uniqueness. So now you've got these different things to engage in. You've got study, you've got inner work, you've maybe got your transcendental meditations, you've got anything that causes your heart to open, and then you have how you show up in the world, right? Your service, your engagement, get involved in life, travel, do things, work. And that is also going to give you feedback about how all the rest of this is working together. So my answer, which is, I know it's a bit more of a complicated answer. It's not just A plus B equals C answer to your question about how can we figure out, who we are and why we're here, is to truly start to engage in all these different elements and to understand that it all works together. Just because I'm seeing a pattern in this lately, there are 5 stages. And we could almost say it's spirit, it is mind, it is body and emotions, it is heart, and it's life. It's engagement with life as a mirror. And if I go and look at Chinese medicine, we have a similar map. We have heart, we have lungs, we have kidneys, we have these different elements of self. And you would never try to understand the body by getting rid of all of 85% of your organs and saying, let's just open the heart and we'll figure everything out. Because it doesn't work like that. It is a holistic system. So you can't say, I'm just going to meditate into oneness and know everything. Impossible. You can't say, I'm just going to study from now until the end of the universe and know everything about myself and life. Impossible. You can't just do shadow work and think you're going to know everything, because it's only a small part of a bigger story. You can't just open your heart and drink cacao and dance around and do authentic relating and think that's going to answer all your questions. And you can't not show up in the world and think you're going to fully uncover the mystery of yourself, because there's something about engaging with others, being a part of, being invested in your community, in the world, in life, that will eventually give you, we'll call them gifts back. You're not going to get those gifts through meditation or shadow work or any other way other than being in life, being part of sharing your gifts, being in service. So it's a holistic map. If you want to answer that question about yourself, get ready to be engaged in life in many different ways.
When you were talking there, you're talking about the organs, and that connected a dot there when I was thinking about when everyone's got their own unique purpose. If we really own our energy and our passions and what we really love to do, and stop trying to do other things that are not aligned with us, that we're doing because we're trying to people please and things like that, we're actually kind of, I've discovered this in working in teams, that and sensing energy and feeling the resistance, that if someone keeps taking on so many projects and so many things, they're actually taking on a certain space of energy. It's actually taking the potential away from somebody else. And they don't even like, this person, for example, doesn't even like this project, but they take it on because they think they're going to get more recognition for taking it on. And then they burn out and all that stuff. But as they take on this energy, this project that they don't even like, there's somebody over here sitting in a chair or whatever it is, and they actually are perfectly aligned with that. But because this person's owned and taken this space up, this other person can't actually get in. And so I think there's a real importance that we do own this stuff, because there's this thing about, I don't want to seem lazy. I don't want to seem like I'm not doing anything. And it's actually, you're going to benefit so much better if you just own that. Be like, actually, that's not for me. Let it be. Open that door, open that space. Someone else is going to jump in. They'll be like, oh, this is so great for me. And it reminded me when you were talking about the organs. Imagine if your lungs, or let's say your stomach was trying to be your heart, trying to do the heart's job, and the heart was trying to do the job of the intestine, and the brain was trying to do the job of the left kidney. It would be a complete mess. So they do
Exactly.
exactly what they're supposed to do.
You're literally describing the state of the world right now, because that is what is happening. We have people who come, I mean, it's all part of the process. So I'm not saying any of this to say, oh, we got it wrong. Universe is perfect. This dysfunction is part of the hero's journey that you mentioned at the beginning. But what you're talking about with heart wanting to be the lungs and the lungs wanting to be the kidneys is what we can see mirrored in our world right now, because we come in with all the wisdom within our DNA and ourselves to know what tree we're meant to grow into. Right? You put a seed in the ground and it grows into the tree it's meant to grow into. But we go off to school, or we are in a family unit that is so strong on its socialization and its indoctrination that we have to go through this system. And because of the beautiful capacity we have to think, we can actually grow up thinking, I need to be something that I am not and never will be and cannot ever be, because it's not who I'm here to be. Now, there's a lot of people actually in the spiritual field who hate this idea. They hate it. So if you let me jam on this for a while, I'm very passionate about this, because there are a lot of people who are like, we're infinite, right? They're on the transcendental path. They've hit a couple of experiences of oneness where there's infinite possibility. And they're like, I'm able to become anything. I should be able to be whatever I want. And it's an extremely damaging idea at a certain level of understanding, because there is an ultimate truth to that. But as a human being, that is not the truth, because you're not here to be anything other than what you came to be. When you start to marry those big transcendental ideas with something like study and the rest of that diagram, right? Cleaning up and showing up and all the other things, you start to understand, wait a minute. I am here to be whatever this thing is. I am here to be an artist. I'm an artist through and through. In fact, I'm here to be a very particular type of artist. I'm here to do this thing in this way, and that is very unique to who I am. And some people wake up and say, I'm a teacher. Through and through and through and through. At a high level, of course, I'm not a teacher, because at the highest level, we're nothing. We're no thing. But at a human level, that is who I am. And so the quicker we can start to wrap our head around, actually, we are here to be a very unique part of this ecosystem, the quicker we'll start to realize, I'm not meant to do that thing. That thing over there, I'm not meant to do it. Could I try and force myself to try and get the recognition? Probably. And as you were mentioning before, a lot of the people who are jumping into things that they don't really want to do is because they've been driven by a shadow of, I don't know, unworthiness or not good enoughness, or they want the recognition, they haven't got some basic need met, so they're jumping into things that they don't really want to do, because they think, if I do that, people are going to see me, people are going to recognize me. But it causes the whole system to start to dysfunction. Surprise, surprise. And that's what we see on the planet. It's mirrored everywhere. So the faster we can get back to going, wait a minute. And you said something to me when we were talking that was such an aha moment for me. And you just said it again now. And I want to say it again because it's so brilliant. When we are driven by a fear and we go do something that we're not necessarily here to do, that's not our thing. That's not our passion. It's not been driven by love. It's been driven by fear. We can take the place of somebody else. And that causes the person who would love to do that thing to sit on the sidelines. So maybe that person's sitting on the sideline, waiting for you to get out of the way so that they can step in. And there'll be a perfect mirroring thing happening, where this person probably needs to wake up to the realization that they don't even want to do this, or they're doing it because they need some need met. So they need to do some shadow work to understand that, so that they go, whoa, I don't even want to do that thing, so that they can step out, while simultaneously the person sitting on the bench is probably going through their own inner shadow work, realizing, I really need to stand up and say yes to what I want to do, because I really want that position, but because of my conditioning, I'm too afraid to say yes. I'm too afraid to step up. So they're going through their thing, and it will probably just so happen that the day this one goes, I don't even want to do this thing, this one will go, I've just found the inner confidence to say, it's me, like, put me there, and it will shift. And in the body will go, oh God, thank you so much. That feels like a little bit more harmony in the entire system. So this is how we're working as a global family. And so slowly, we got to start to clean up, wake up, show up, do all the things, so we can get out of what we don't want to be doing Let go of all the conditioning that says you're only going to be loved, you're only going to be successful, you're only going to be safe if you go do that thing that you don't want to do, that you're not very good at anyway. We've got to wake up out of that and go, doesn't even work. It's not even getting my needs met in the way I truly want them met at the most holistic, deepest level. It's not leading to success for me or happiness, and it's definitely not good for the whole. So we got to kind of get to that point and go, okay, I'm not doing that thing anymore. I'm now going to be the musician I was always meant to be. Or I love systems. I'm really happy in systems. I don't want to be the CEO. I've met people like this, like, I don't want to be the CEO. I have no desire to be the CEO just because I'm smart. I pushed myself into it, but I love being second in charge. I love systems. Can I please let go of this ridiculous CEO role and step into second in charge and get to do the thing that I love, which is so weird to everyone else, which is systems and data and reading numbers and making sense of it. I've met someone like this, just like, please just let me do that. I'm like, yeah, get out of that role and get into that role, because you'll be so good there and someone else can then take over the CEO role and life will start functioning in a more smooth and harmonious way. So simple when we think about it like this.
There's a statement that I'm sure is going to come up many times in this podcast, because when I heard it, it came from, I think it comes from the science space in general, but Einstein is often accredited with saying it. I don't think he was the only one, but everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler.
I love it.
And it drives me. There are some quotes that drive me that kind of are my teacher, because it seems like a very simple statement. And then as the months and years go by, you keep getting new awareness about what this means. And it's such a profound quote, actually. And it just means that there's a certain complexity to something, and you can find that simplicity. Like this phone, for example, it's got so much stuff inside of it, but it's potentially as simple as it can be and no simpler. So there is loads of complexity to it. But if you remove one of those chips, all of a sudden it doesn't work. If you add maybe another chip, maybe it would also make it not work. So there's this fine, perfect line to finding this simplicity, which is why I think they say it in the science field, because that's the key to really finding what works, is to find that balance. I often use the example of the Bohemian Rhapsody, the song. If you have this song that's considered one of the greatest songs I've ever written, but imagine if you took out like the bass line of it or something. It's a super complex song, right? So many elements to it, so many vocal lines, all these different areas. But if you removed one element of that, even the smallest little thing, it's not that song anymore, and it wouldn't have the same impact. You add an extra vocal onto it, and it would also probably ruin it. It probably would not have that same impact. So it's perfect as it is, as complex as it is, and still as simple as possible.
I think I'm going to adopt this as one of my favorite quotes. I haven't heard it before you saying it, but I love that, and I could definitely see myself happily living by it, because it allows the spectrum to coexist, and then it looks for the harmony in what would, in some ways be seen as seeming opposites. I can imagine some people who are so deep in the complexity and they think it's only complex, and I think there are some people who think it's only simple, and it's just not. It's neither of those things. It's both of those. And when you find that, again, you're pointing to this middle path. It allows for both sides to coexist, and then you find what's in the middle without getting rid of either of those two truths. Simplicity and complexity, they're part of one truth.
Is there a difference between spiritual experiences and actually the development of spiritual intelligence?
Oh my goodness, yes. They are so different and so misunderstood. Spiritual experience is a spiritual experience. And in Ken Wilber's body of work, they have looked at many people who have mapped different stages of spiritual experience. I'm not necessarily going to give you the names of them, but they're in many, 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 many different pathways to experiencing what we would call non-dual awareness. So you have these different levels of experience. I mean, this is the core here. It is experience. It is felt in the body. It is known. It is not an idea. It's not a concept. So spiritual experience, anyone who's on the path of spiritual experience, they get a little bit weird and a little bit mystical in the way they talk about things, because they say anything you say is not it. You can, don't mistake the hand for where you're looking. This is where you get all your Zen koans from. This is where you get all your riddles from. And this pathway is something that just, it's beyond concept, right? So this is when someone's walking down the path one day and they look up into the sun, and all of a sudden they realize, wait, I'm not looking at the sun. I am the sun. And not only am I the sun, I am the earth that the sun radiates down upon. I am the trees and the people, and there is the me that's also the me, and the sun and the total and the whole. Oh my God, we are one. This is experience. Spiritual cognitive development is your thoughts, your perceptions, your ideas about spirituality. And actually, cognitive development moves in stages. They're very different things. So we could almost call this spirit or experience and mind, intelligence. And there's many different types of intelligences that we can go through. Again, I'm pulling from integral theory here because it's just so brilliant in its map. But we have intellectual development, we have sexual development, we have mathematical development, we have spiritual development. So I'm now going to pull out that one there, because the question specifically is there a difference between your spiritual cognitive development and spiritual experiences. So spiritual cognitive development is a particular line of intelligence that develops. And they've researched now hundreds of developmental researchers who've put together bodies of work and had a look at development through different stages of all these different lines of intelligence. And they have found that there are consistent stages that we go through on the most minimalistic, and it's all just arbitrary names that these guys give it, but the most minimalistic amount of stages, you're going through 4. You're going through a very egocentric phase in which it's only about you. You go through an ethnocentric phase, which it's about the community. It's about, now it's my tribe, it's my community, but anything outside of that is other. You go through a world-centric view where it's a global family, and then you can hit a cosmocentric view, which is the total of all divinity is connected. And so our spiritual intelligence is literally going through that developmental line. Interestingly, ethnocentric development is where you see all of your dogmatic religions sit. Any religion that believes my way is the only way and any other religion is outside of that sits in this ethnocentric stage of development. I think research shows, and it's not that long ago they did it, something like 60 to 70% of the global population is in an ethnocentric phase of development. Somewhere between 0 and 10%, I believe, is in egocentric. So don't quote me on those numbers, but far more than half the global population is either an ego or ethnocentric development in their cognitive thoughts, in the spiritual line, right? World-centric is, 15, 20% of the population, and then cosmocentric, less than 10% of the population. And then there's different stages even within that. Now, what this means, and this is the piece that I love this part of the conversation, is that if you have a spiritual cognitive development that is in an ethnocentric stage, which means you are still seeing at least spirituality or religion, let's say spirituality through a religious lens, if you have a transcendental oneness experience, your oneness experience does not dictate your cognitive development. Your cognitive development will dictate how you experience your oneness experience. It will take its worldview and place it over that experience and pull that down to your level of psychological development. In terms of dogmatic Christianity, what that could look like is a dogmatic fundamentalist Christian having a oneness experience and saying, I just had a born-again Christian experience, and putting it in that category. So they can genuinely believe that they have had a genuine spiritual experience, but they are now interpreting it at a low level of psychological development. And guess what can happen after that? they can go on to still want to kill other people that they do not believe fit into their worldview, because anyone outside of that fundamental framework must be a heretic or having experiences that are of the devil. That can happen. This also happens hugely in the psychedelic field. So people are having psychedelic experiences. They're using Bufo to have oneness experiences, or San Pedro or ayahuasca, whatever it is. And their psychological development is then interpreting what they went through the next day. So some people at a low level, this isn't like you're low and bad. It's just about your awareness. But if you're deeply superstitious, that's actually a very low level of psychological development. But if you're extremely superstitious and then you go and sit with ayahuasca, everything you see will be in the realm of superstition. And you will think in terms of black and white and good and evil, and it will be a battle of dark and light. If you are not, I don't know that many fundamentalist Christians who go and sit with ayahuasca, but if you go and are a fundamentalist Christian, you sit with ayahuasca, you might meet Jesus and believe you've actually met Jesus. If you are somebody who is a bit more of a world-centric person, you might interpret your experiences at a slightly higher level. There is a level in which you will see all the metaphors and the archetypes, and you still think they're outside of you, and it's the medicine, and they've come to me, and I saw a real angel, and I saw a real, mechanical gnome that comes from the mechanical gnome world, and you will still believe it's outside of you. But as you get to more of a cosmic-centric spiritual line of development, you will understand this is a metaphorical image that I have created from within myself, because there's nothing outside of myself, in order to give myself a lesson or a realization that ultimately leads to more understanding of wholeness and harmony. So those two things that you mentioned are entirely different. It's extremely necessary to understand these two lines of development. Otherwise, what happens, and we're going to see way more of it, is more and more people flocking to try and have spiritual experiences, and not understanding that their level of psychological development is actually interpreting their experiences. And then we're going to see far more people wandering around the world, becoming more dogmatic, becoming more convinced that they're God, becoming more convinced that what they saw was ultimate truth, not a relative metaphor that they created within their consciousness to teach them. And we're actually going to start to see potentially more arguing, more fighting, more psychosis, more confusion. And worse still, a lot of these people who are now going to seek out a lot of these things are not deeply versed in understanding how to evolve their psyche. They're not deeply versed in spiritual study. They just want to go and work with more medicine, or they want to go work with more experience, and they never develop their intelligence. So yeah, big topic of conversation, and just such an important one right now, because there is not only a lot of confusion, there's a lot of arguing, there's a lot of pain and a lot of misunderstanding been thrown around. A lot of communities and people around the world when it comes to these two pathways.
What's coming up for me as an example, I'd love to hear your feedback on this, because it's more just a present thought that I'd like to explore. Say, for example, someone has whatever spiritual experience, whether it's plant medicine, whether it's something else, and they have, say, a limited view of, say, Jesus and all the stuff that they've read. And so it's kind of contained in this physical human Jesus version, which is very limited in the way people perceive it from what they read, because obviously these books have been edited over time and it's designed that way. But what if they have this experience of actually the Christ consciousness, which is this energy, just like a frequency that penetrates all parts of your body? Does that then affect, so their limitation here, they have this experience, but they talk themselves out of it, for want of a better term, because this is their model. So they can't fully experience the Christ consciousness energy and realize that, because that actually threatens their belief system that, no, this is the Jesus that I've been taught and told, not that's too big, it's too infinite, it's too much love, and there's no judgment. Oh, I'm used to this judgment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What would your question be about it?
I'm just wondering if that is the actual an example of what you're sharing around this the difference between having this spiritual experience can be the Christ consciousness there, but because the development stage of spiritual intelligence here is actually stuck in this space, that they can't actually have the experience. So it's a practice. I'm not really sure what the question would be. Maybe there doesn't need to be one, but just
maybe that doesn't need to be one. No, I think this is really interesting, and I don't think that it would be the same for every person, because we're very, very dynamic and multidimensional. But let's just look at some different possibilities. If we have a person who is extremely dogmatic in their worldview, very, very limited, and they have they go and take an ayahuasca trip or take some mushrooms, number one, they may actually not allow themselves to experience anything beyond what's within their worldview. So yeah, the rigidity around the mind may force their experience into their rigidity. Right? It also depends on the strength of the medicine, because sometimes, if you're on a lower dose medicine, it's easier to stay in control of the mind. So the mind can really be interpreting that experience, and you can be in control of it. Sometimes on these higher dose experiences, it really, like, there's a push between these two spaces, and it starts to pull apart your worldviews, and you're having these experiences. And here I could see one of a couple of things happening. If you are on the edge of your expansion in terms of your mental intelligence, if you've started reading books, if you've started hanging out with other people, and it's become a little bit porous, you may be ready for your belief system to crack. And you have this experience, and it's strong enough for you to allow yourself to start to disintegrate what you thought was the truth, so that it could start to come back at a higher level. This, in some ways, I'd say this is the same path. It just depends on how you process it. If you are porous enough in your mind, if you're open-minded enough, and you're willing, and if you have a level of understanding of, like, I'm really going through a death process here, and I am capable of letting that go in order to reach to this higher level of understanding, and I'm going to allow that to bring my thoughts back at a higher level, you can evolve quite quickly. And someone could do that with a certain level of grace. The other option I see is that this person has their consciousness cracked open to a truth that really goes against their worldview, and it cracks it in so many ways, and they go into what might look like a psychological break for a while, and they're battling in their mind between the two things, and they just don't know how to put these two things together, because they're like, this defines who I am. I've had an experience that completely goes against all of that, and I really don't know what to do with this. They don't have yet within their understanding, I'm in a death and rebirth process. This is actually part of my evolution. It's uncomfortable, but I'm excited about it. Therefore, I'm going to move through it with a certain level of grace and, like, yes. And this other person is like, fuck, what the fuck? I don't know what to do with this. And this, in some cases, may look like psychological collapse for a while, and they're bouncing. And I've seen this in people who they're fighting, and they're like, boof, 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 and they can't put it together yet. And they go to their people to try and help them, their group of people, try and put them back together. So if they go back to their community, they're going to try and convince them that, no, don't grow. But if they go out of it, it gets really weird and bizarre. This part of the evolutionary process, especially with someone who's not fully prepared for what that might do to them, can be extremely uncomfortable. And in some ways, this is what I think people would say is the most dangerous part of trying to wake up too quickly without actually developing your spiritual intelligence at the same time, because it can be a real, I call it death and rebirth. You're dying. You're dying. Your old ideas of yourself are dying, but you're dying with a lot of fear and a lot of resistance and a lot of confusion about what's happening. So you're kicking and screaming your way through the death process. And it will bring up all your fears of annihilation, loss of community, loss of tribe. What does it mean? All your meaning structure will start to disintegrate around this area of your life. And I think this is what happens to people when they say, I went through, like, a spiritual awakening / breakdown. They call it a dark night of the soul. And this is the part of spirituality that a lot of people make fun of, where they're like, you think it's nice, but wait until you have this experience. And people are like, fuck this. I don't know what to do. I want to go back to the Matrix, or I want to go back to my old idea. Ignorance sounds like bliss, but I'm stuck. I can't undo it. I don't know how to move forward. This is the third option. And sadly, I think a lot of people have opted for that one unconsciously. And it makes their evolutionary process extremely uncomfortable.
It reminds me of the importance of the community and people to talk to. You know, the integration processes, as the term is usually used within, say, we're referring mostly now in this moment to plant medicine stuff. And when you go back, you have shifted something shifted within you. Now, it's not a silver bullet. You still have all of your stuff going on and your environment's still the same. This is the interesting thing. So you get back into your environment, the building's still the same. You maybe got the same partner, same kid, same garden, same, all of this stuff. Nothing's changed physically, but you may have changed something within you. And now it's like, how do you now communicate? Because now you've got different codes, different language, different awareness around certain things. And that's where I think a lot of people need to make sure that they do get to talk to other people that understand part of this process, or it can at least just listen without judgment and reflect. They don't even have to be a master in this space, but someone that's a master to just listen without trying to fix anything, because you're going to feel a little bit weird in some of the thoughts that you have, and you need to have someone to sit there and not look at you like you are a weirdo. Like, oh, you're absolutely, everything that you're saying, lay it out.
Yeah.
This is what we're here for.
Yeah, actually, I have found that that is the singular most helpful thing for people who are going through this phase. So I actually have broken down this transformational phase into these 3 steps, just so people could understand it. Firstly, there would be, and actually just again to put us in the meta map I was talking about before, this would be in a way shadow work. You could look at this in the frame of shadow work. So you recognize something. So let's say you recognize a pattern or an identity or a part of yourself that's been there for a long time. And this can happen with psychedelics or meditation. It's really, they're just tools. It's not the thing that will make it happen. It's just a tool. But let's say you recognize, okay, there is this aspect of me that has thought this way my entire life. Maybe I have believed my entire life. Let me try and think of something. Okay, I'll take something that was real for me. I have a part of myself that has believed my entire life that I'm a good person. But something's happened in my life recently where I'm getting a lot of feedback that that's not the case. And I go into an inner work process or a medicine or a shadow work process, and I find that actually there's an aspect of me that is not good at all, based on my definition of not good. Selfish, arrogant, cruel, mean, needy. Recognize, holy shit, that's inside of me. Oh my God. And then you start to, and this is an intellectual thing, right? You look at it and go, oh my God, there's this wound, there's this shadow inside of me. And what I've done to be able to protect myself is I've created this identity around being a good person. So now I try and go out to the world and I'm a good person and I'm a loving person based on my ideas of what that means. And now I'm looking at the full story and going, fuck. Not only am I not a good person, it's all a facade. It's all a creation of mine. Shit. And then the reclaiming process, if you know how to do it, you go and you find that wound and you reclaim it into yourself. And you meet those parts, you become those parts, you feel those parts, you understand them. This is shadow work. And you reclaim them. And this is all, there's ways to do this. It's amazing. You reclaim them. Maybe at this point you're like, wow, I'm going to reclaim some shadows. I'm going to change my life. But what happens here is that you have had an identity structure that you have understood for years. You've understood yourself as the good person based on this identity. You don't even know what this part of you is, and you just reclaimed them both. So what happens is that your psychological understanding of yourself disintegrates into yourself. It literally disintegrates. You could say that it goes from thought back to energy. It goes from crystallized idea back into potential. Sounds beautiful it sounds beautiful in some ways. When we're learning about it, we're like, that's cool. We're gonna reclaim our aspects. We're gonna reclaim our energy. We're not gonna be so fragmented. But then what happens is, for a period of time, I'm just saying the same thing again in another way. You realize, holy shit, I don't know who I am, because my identity until this point has been based on a fragmented story. I believed I was this, and I didn't know this existed, and I had a whole story here, and now it's gone. So I all of a sudden don't really know what it means to be good. I don't understand what it means to be a loving, caring, kind person. I don't really know what it means to reclaim the fact that I am selfish and I am mean, and all of this is just disintegrated into me. And now I need to take the time, which is what you're talking about, to put the story back together. And this does not happen instantaneously. This is not a boom, I've got it, everything's come back together, I'm walking out of this session in an hour, clear, clean, and evolved. This is, oh my God, I need some time. I need some time to re-navigate who I am. It's the same process we were talking about before of people becoming more aware of themselves. But this is the part where you have to wait. You have to wait for what wants to come next to come through you. Having people to talk to about this is extremely helpful, because if you don't have someone who's going through it and explaining it, at least maybe at the level I'm explaining it, people are just like, what the fuck is happening to me? How do I communicate to people? I don't even know how to ask somebody for help. I don't know what I need help with anymore. I just know I feel really, really off. This is uncomfortable. Maybe I need to go to the doctor. People have gone to the doctor in this phase and been like, I need meds because I feel like I'm going through a psychosis or a breakdown. Maybe I'm depressed. Sure, that's all part of it. You might have a depression. You might be extremely afraid. This brings up people's existential fear of death. People sometimes think, I'm dying. I'm actually dying through this phase, because you are. Part of you is dying. So people start panicking. I've seen all of this. And the one thing that calms them down is to say, this is absolutely perfect. Let me share with you what you're going through. I'll give you the map here. And they go, oh my God, thank God. All right. So I just need someone to help me understand where I am. Just need to know how to breathe and relax, and know that this is going to take some time, and see if I can get myself into an environment where this is not seen as crazy, but seen as part of an evolutionary process that actually means I'm right on track and doing an amazing job. I just haven't come back as the butterfly yet. I'm still in the mushy caterpillar phase, but it's coming. And we need time to relax and rest and breathe, and have someone, as you mentioned, to hold our hand through that. It is very helpful if you have the chance or the capacity to have someone like that in your field.
And something that's really important for me in this field is really having that discernment to tune in, because we all have such deep awareness that we very rarely give ourselves credit for. We are so aware of so much that we do. Our intuitions are really sharp, but we talk ourselves out of it. We don't even realize we have these things. But we have an awareness of who should be the right people to talk to, who are the people that are going to listen, who are the people that's really safe. Safe space is a topic that comes up a lot. And, sometimes there are people that when you speak to, they don't have to say a word, and it's all in their energy. And someone could say, I listen without judgment. Okay, you said that. Let's sit together and listen, and let me be the judge of that. Because there's something I had from a very young age, which I only started to discover as I became more curious later in life, was, wow, I had a lot more awareness around this when I was even a child, which actually then caused the difficulty. Kind of circling back to where you were talking earlier about this, you had this awareness of authenticity, but you didn't really know how to fit into the world. I realized this is a big reason why I got into this work, not because I decided or I had to do this. Is never my plan. It came organically off the back of me just doing my own inner work. But I realized when I was thinking and reverse engineering some of this stuff, like what I struggled to open up to people, share my emotions, just lay it out there. And I realized, I was wondering why is that? And there were a few people in my life earlier on. I can't even remember who they were, but I just remember the energy of the space where they could just sit there and I would maybe open up, share my emotions, cry a little bit, say something that's a little bit vulnerable or whatever. And I was thinking, what's the difference between them and other people? Why can't I speak to other people? And I just realized I had this awareness that there's an energy, an invisible field where I can actually feel that this person is completely open. They're not judging. They're not thinking about what to say next. They're not trying to fix me. They're not trying to just give me strategies and things to do, because that doesn't work with me. But as they listen purely in that space, we create this extra mind And within that extra mind, that's where the wisdom already just pops into my awareness, and it's there. And I think it's really important to find these people because they are there. Don't find someone that's just going to fix you and tell you what to do, because if you've got subconscious beliefs that go against those actions because it's too much, you're not going to do those actions. But if you find someone that can just listen to you, you'll discover this awareness, and it will just come out automatically. And then you'll realize what steps you need to take going forward. I just think that's a really important thing for people to realize, because I've struggled to find help myself. That's been a big story in my life. And and I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful place when you meet those people and you just see it in their eyes. They have no agenda. They're just there. They're just there to listen.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much in what you just said. Because I would go as far as to say I believe those people probably have a very open heart to start with. You, in your language, you even said that, they're open, you see it. So I think what we're talking about here is somebody who does have a very open heart. And the qualities that come with an open heart is care and kindness and compassion. It's actually quite a challenging thing to have an open heart in this world. So if somebody does, what that means is that they can feel you, right? They can feel you. They can feel what you're going through. And sometimes that's enough. For me, I was just saying that I believe that another thing's probably happening with those people beyond just the open-heartedness. I would suspect that they also have at least a world-centric viewpoint in certain levels of their intelligence. I would say that they're probably hitting that. So I would, if we were to test their intelligence, I think they're probably going to be actually quite high on the intelligence, and they may know intellectually, I don't need to say anything. That's not what this person needs. But I would also suspect that this person's probably done enough shadow work within themselves to be able not to judge you. So I would assume that quite a few things are going on inside of that person that we have no idea how evolved some of these beautiful, we'll call them space holders, are, because you go and they just sit, and maybe they don't have to say anything. And you walk away going, wow, I feel so good. And you think it was just that they were present. But I would say there's so much more going on inside that person than we could ever comprehend, because it takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of self-integration to be able to truly sit with another person non-judgmentally. And that is what causes another person to feel safe enough to open up. We're not judging them. But a lot of people say, I'm non-judgmental, but 95% of their subconscious is judging, and they have no control over it. And they're sitting there saying, I'm non-judgmental, which means they're in denial, which makes them an even less safe person.
That's a great point. I'm so glad you just dropped into that about this judgment thing. I think it's really healthy for us to realize, hey, we're human. We are gonna have judgmental thoughts. Let's not beat ourselves up about that. Let's perhaps just, judgment, let it go. Judgment, let it go. And recognize these judgments and let them go, not stay focused and grip hold of them and try and fight them and be like, no, I'm not judgmental. Where did that come from? Because we all do that. And we're also connected in this field that sometimes these judgments that we have, we may just be picking up from somebody else around us in a field, but then we identify it as our own and beat ourselves up. But maybe we can learn to have compassion that, oh, I just had this judgmental thought about the way someone's dressed. I'm walking down the street. Oh, those shoes look a bit weird. And I'm like, whoa, where did that judgment come from? It doesn't feel like me. And you realize maybe I just connected with their self-judgment about how they look in the clothes that they wear. Wow, this is opens up a whole nother rabbit hole, because this is a topic I didn't even think about it until this moment. This topic is so interesting to me, because the more I cleared in myself over the years, the more I started to become aware that, sometimes these judgments were from them. And then I started to learn to have the compassion around that they've got self-worth issues or self-esteem issues around the way they look and dress, or the way their hair is, or whatever it might be. And then it's like, okay, And it's like that ho'oponopono thing. Oh, I love you. Thank you. Please forgive me. And just sort of let it clear and let it go, because we are one. And that supports us all, including ourselves.
Yeah, the topic of judgment is a beautiful one. It's a very, very, very necessary one. Often when I begin this conversation with people, I actually have them go and meet judgment as a character within themselves first and foremostly. Because sometimes we judge ourselves for judging so fast, and we don't even know what judgment is, why it exists, why we do it. We just think we should hate it because we get told, don't judge. It's not a good thing to do. So interestingly, if we go in and we meet judgment itself doesn't believe it's doing anything bad or wrong. Just like no character inside of our consciousness ever believes it's doing something bad or wrong. It has a service. There's a point for it. And what we often find with judgment, it is the most amazing character for keeping things separate. Judgment separates us. It separates people. It separates aspects of ourselves. And people might say, oh, but that's bad. We shouldn't be separate. And I said, wait a minute. If you've experienced pain in your life, judgment becomes the way to keep yourself away from the pain. It is actually an adaptive behavioral pattern that keeps things away, pain away from you. So internally, when we judge ourselves, what we're doing is we're taking a part of ourselves that we don't like, and we're judging it to get rid of it, push it deep into denial. So if we judge ourselves for being angry, we're trying to get rid of our anger. We're trying to actually get it away from ourselves, because we believe if I allow that anger in, all hell's going to break loose. I'm going to lose all my needs. I'm going to be punished the way I was punished when I was a child. I'm going to be put in my room. I'm going to be smacked. I'm not going to be liked. And my life is over. I'm not going to make a partner. I'll never get a job. Boom, 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 boom. Terrible. So then what happens? This is so fascinating. We can go on a process of judging ourselves so deeply, so deeply, so deeply that eventually we push so deeply into our subconscious the things we judge about ourselves so that we're not even aware of it anymore. We're not aware of the fact that we hate our own anger. We're not aware of how deeply we hate our own selfishness, because we don't even identify with being selfish or angry anymore. We would walk around saying, I'm not selfish. I'm not angry. I'm not judgmental. But then we walk around the world and we start seeing stuff in other people. This is such an amazing thing to understand. So let's say someone comes into your field who's angry, and what's happening is your subconscious anger is being projected onto them, magnifying their anger. This is something I've learned recently. So when you perceive, whoa, that person's really angry and it makes me feel very uncomfortable, you might not feel your own anger because you're not letting yourself. You might feel afraid. But the reason they feel so angry to you is because not only do they hold the anger within themselves, you've taken your anger and magnified their anger with your anger. And then we project and say, well, that person's angry. I'm not angry, they're angry. It never works like that, especially if we start feeling the dislike of it. So when we start experiencing within ourselves dislike of qualities in other people, it is a mirror of what you dislike in yourself. People hate this idea. And the more strongly repulsed you are by something you see in your partner, in your family, in the politicians of the world, in a group of people doing something, the more angry you get at people who are engaging in behaviors that are damaging the world, the more angry you are, or the more resistant or repulsed you are by it, the more it is highlighting your judgment of yourself in that exact same area. So the way that we start to unravel these judgments, I love that you say, we clear it. I'd love to know for you how you clear it, because I think a lot of people are like, well, how do we do this? For me, it's to turn around and go find it in myself, to go find it. It's to shadow work has these stages, and there's many things I love. Gestalt therapy is an amazing way to do it, where you go find that thing in yourself, you meet it, you talk to it, you learn about it. You can do quantum shifts where you become it, you feel it, you understand, and you go, oh my God, it is me. You feel it in your bones. You no longer can reject it in yourself. And you go through a process of understanding, reclaiming, and then the loving part comes, the forgiveness part comes, and you go through that journey of integration. But yeah, however people do it, whatever tool or technique they're using, if they haven't done this, if they haven't seen this in themselves, that energy that you're talking about, that some people have, that just radiates non-judgment and love and kindness, you can't get there without doing that work. You can't just be like, oh, I want to be a loving, kind person. It doesn't work like that. You have to do your inner work. You have to integrate all these judgments, meet them, and actually end that saga within yourself, so that you can walk through the world with an open heart and a deep knowing in yourself that you actually don't judge that part, because you've reclaimed it. Not because it's not in you, because it is in you, and you're totally, completely okay with it being there.
Mm.
And this is what makes amazing practitioners. Healers. This is a big part of what, it's not the only thing, but it is a huge part of what makes an amazing healer, because then you can just sit and be, and all of that energy is transmitting. Boom, 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 boom. What is it transmitting into? A feeling of safety in the other person. What does that do for the other person? Allows them to start sharing what they have been afraid to share. So it starts bringing that up in that person, and a healing journey starts to happen between the two people. It seems magical, but when you break it down and you look at it, there is absolute process to it. There's perfect science to it every single time.
Yeah, you asked me
how do you clear?
How do I clear it as well? So I just want to touch on that for a second.
I'd love to know.
Because what you shared as well, I really resonated. It's, for me, first things first, find what works. There are a million tools out there, and you may find some tools that you really connect with right now. I found that tools tend to shift and change. There are some things that I just don't use anymore because I feel like I've exhausted everything from that modality. For example, EFT, life-changing for me. I don't use it anymore. Not because it's not amazing, but it's just I've got different tools that work with me now. So I would still recommend people check out EFT if they haven't, but it's going to connect with some people more than others, depending on what you need, because sometimes you need that physical thing to remind you to connect with your body and make that connection. But now I can do all of this stuff without physically doing anything with my body, really. But so anyway, there's that one thing. Find what works. But when you also mentioned earlier, I said it, clear it. I'm clearing it. There's an important distinction is also to realize I'm not clearing it, as you said earlier. I'm not clearing it like, oh, there's anger. Quick, get away, get away, get away. It's not like that, because if I'm doing that, then I'm basically saying, oh, I don't like you. You shouldn't be here. Get out. Whereas it's more a sense of, oh, there's a sense of anger right here. I'm feeling this anger, whatever this is. And I tend to recognize a place in my body where it might be. Sometimes it could be really strong. Sometimes it could be subtle. And it's different for everyone, right? So this is where my journey actually began, of me needing to shift these emotions. And then as I learned how to shift them with different tools, I became way more at peace. And it was in that peace that I started to realize, or people started coming to me wanting that support. And I was like, okay, this is happening organically. I never planned to do this. I just wanted to help myself. And the anger was in the solar plexus. It was like constant fire all the time. And I realized that's been there my whole life. I'm not an angry person, but there's anger inside. I would have moments where I'd flip out if I couldn't do something, figure something out, but that anger, I realized, was there. And as I shifted it and cleared it, I became clearer. So it's kind of finding it within your body and then just exploring it. And whether it's finding how big is it, what shape is it wet, is it cold, is it moving, is it solid, is it hollow? All of this stuff can help you gain a bit of presence towards it. Because if I find that a great technique to do is to just try and find as many labels for it as possible, because then you're focusing on it, because it's so easy for the mind to get distracted otherwise and just stay in the I'm just angry. So you focus on this thing and you go, oh, now I'm not really identified with the anger. I'm just identified with the sensation that I've got going on. And the more we do that, the more that starts to shift in itself anyway. But it's really about creating your awareness of this thing, being present with it, and then allowing energy to flow, because it's kind of a blocked energy here. And that's why EFT can work really well, because you're creating a physical activation of the meridians, for example, that actually cause energy to flow and move by physically tapping. Like I said, you don't necessarily need that, but at some stage you might, because you might need to connect the two dots between, okay, I don't know what energy feels like when it's moving. Okay, well, try stuff like this. Maybe it's Ho'oponopono. I mean, I use Psyche as my favorite tool because it's just very clear. It's like using ChatGPT for myself. I just figure out what I want. I ask it stuff. I just reprogram, change the belief, do all this stuff, and it shifts the energy. And I can find out information about what this anger is, for example. So there's always wisdom and information within that sensation as well. So it's not just about getting rid of it and clearing it, but by just being present with it, you will discover there is wisdom inside that anger all the time. And as that then clears, you will have an aha about what it is, and it will shift your perception going forward. And who knows how else that will shift for other people in your family, bloodline, collective, because it's energy and we're all connected. So if you shift that, it actually makes a ripple.
So perfect. It's so perfect. And I'm glad you went deeper into it, because when people are hearing things, I know that certain language lands with people in a certain way and they can misinterpret it. And I think a lot of people think clearing is to get rid of. And going deep into what you're saying, you're not saying that at all. Which is, I'm saying the same thing. Actually, I think that we've got a very similar process. There's kind of fundamentals and there's tools to help you go through those fundamentals. But hearing you, one of the things you said is recognize. You said you recognize that there is this anger. I said, I agree with this. I said one of the first things we have to do is recognize the pattern or the trigger or what's going on, or the part. And what are you truly recognizing when you get deep into it is the emotion. Right now we're in somatics. We're in somatics and shadow work and trauma healing are so connected. So we recognize and we get all the way down to the core of recognizing the emotion. And then, as you said, we go deeper and we start to label the sensations. So Peter Levine talks about this a lot. We go from the emotion, which is the cognitive definition of a sensation, as painful or this thing that, an emotion has meaning to it. Whereas when we get into the sensation is actually focusing on the energy of it. And now you're coming into that process where you are identifying that it's in the physical body, which is part of reclaiming. Because if you've disowned your anger, you can go into a denial and say, it's not mine. I don't have it. But when you allow yourself to become aware of it in the body, and you start going deeper and deeper, you can become aware of the fact that actually it's in this body. It's not over there. It's not out there. And sometimes, as I'm sure you and many people listening, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, you will feel it first as a tension, or you'll feel it first as a frustration, and you'll go layer and layer deeper, and it will turn into anger, and you go, oh my God, I didn't even know that was there. Here I am judging everybody else for anger, but there's so much anger there. And you'll penetrate that and it will all come through, and poof, sadness. So much sadness. Oh my God, the grief. And here you are, you haven't cried for 10 years, right? Or someone, they're like, I didn't know I was a sad person. And I've hated my mom my whole life for being a depressed, sad person. But here I am with a repressed aspect of myself that was like her. And in the feeling of it, in the putting my attention in my body of it, and two things are happening. One, I can no longer deny it's outside of who I am. I can no longer deny. So denial is out the window. And then as we go deeper into putting our attention in it, now the cognitive structure is not condensing it into the system. You've let go of thinking about it, and now you're feeling about it, and your feeling about it clears it, moves it, transforms it. And you said something really cool there, which I also agree with. When all of that moves, the realization is on the other side. And the realization can be things like, oh my God, Now I understand something about myself I didn't know before. Oh my God, I've been judging these people all my life and I didn't know why I was doing it or how I was doing it. And now I see and I understand. And not only has the judgment passed, there is compassion where judgment once was. There is a love where a resistance once was. My whole life I wanted to get away from. And now all of a sudden, I feel a wanting to hug energetically. It's incredible. So you're explaining that process beautifully. And of all the modalities I've explored that work, yes, there are different ways to get there, but they go through these fundamental, they recognize, they experience, there's a reclamation of the energy and ownership in a sense of it, and a movement of that through the system. An expression of the emotion moves through, or the sensation moves through the body, we'll call it somatics, and then there's a realization or a renewal of the way you think about yourself and other people. And every process I've seen that works has elements of all of that in there. And it can speed up. The last thing I'll say about that, because you're kind of alluding to it, when you start, you may have to be a bit clunky and you have to have kind of bigger tools and a lot more support and help to go through it, right? And you're so confused, like, what do I do next? Or how do I do this? And you're doing retreats and you're doing, but you do this for 10, 15 years, your ability to go, I recognize there's no resistance in allowing myself to feel, I'm feeling it's moving, 3, 4, 5 minutes later, boom, it's cleared. And you start to let go of all of the like step-by-step processes you have because it's in there. You already know what to do. The fundamentals are there. And so then you get to the point where you're like unconsciously a master of this stuff, where you're like transmuting energy so quickly. It's like boof, boof, feel it, boom. There's no resistance, boom. You're just transmitting energy. Transforming it, alchemizing it through a system that has been trained in many ways to do this very naturally. So now you're someone who walks into the room and you're clearing the room. You're just doing it naturally. You walk in there and you're like, wow, there's so much anxiety in here. And you can own that through your system as well. Obviously, you can't take anything from other people, but boom, you know how to relax into it. You know how to let it there. You can feel it through the body and you're just shifting, transmuting it. Boom. Now you're clearing the air. You may as well be an air conditioner, a really, really good one. Walking through the room, helping the whole room clear. And these are amazing people in the world. We've talked about this as well. This is an incredible, actually all people can do this the more they do their inner clearing. And we have no idea how powerful that is because we can't see it. But those who are tuned in feel it. They see it in their intuition, right? I think you know this world really deeply. I have a feeling you do this when you go into rooms and spaces.
Yeah, and I think it's I'm always questioning like you. I'm always thinking about things, and I wonder how natural it is. I mean, I don't want to go down rabbit hole too much because I can feel my mind already going, oh, all of these shiny objects over here. Let me try and focus. First of all, earlier when I shared about the clearing as well, that just also remember that's one small aspect and perspective. There are a million different things I could say on that topic, but you know, just for the sake of just sharing one small perspective on how that works, that's there. But there's a lot of complexity that goes on sometimes. And also just wanted to touch on what you just said as well about, you know, yes, we can clear, and I've learned how to shift energy super fast within seconds, sometimes instantaneously, sometimes 5 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. But sometimes I could just lie down for 3 hours and be working on something and it's not shifting. And I'm like going through this. So I want people to remember also that there is no rushing the process. Some of these tools help us get there much faster because at the end of the day, all we need to do is just go straight into the operating system and make those changes. But sometimes if we're so out there, we're so stressed, we're so in fear, maybe we've picked up on different energies around us, whatever. There are moments, and I can't remember the last time it happened, but you know, it's probably sometime this year still when something would have happened, and I went to sit down, lie down, and just work through and just clear. this energy to come back into alignment. That's all it is, really. I just need to come back and find alignment. And in that moment, I can't even think of the simplest tools that I know. I don't even remember. I can't even remember anything that I know. So there is sometimes a clunky moment, as you mentioned, and that's okay, because maybe that's just part of the process then. And you feel, oh, I should be doing this better right now. There's no rush. Maybe it's there for a reason, for you to go through that journey, to go through all these twists and turns for your own sake. So you actually have the spiritual experience rather than the actual, just go straight to the intelligence of it, because the experience is what really takes us through and teaches us that, hey, there's divine timing, and all of this gave you a message every single step of the way. And then there's a moment, all of a sudden, the aha comes, and I realize where it comes from, what this energy is, who it comes from, whatever it might be, and then all of a sudden, it's gone, shift. And so, like, Tony Robbins also mentioned something like this. I can't remember the quote, but he's just said something I've ever noticed, that, you know, when you transform, you may have been working on this thing for 10 years, but actually when you transform, it happens in a moment like that. So the transformation didn't take 10 years. The transformation happened instantaneously. Yeah. And that actually sparked me to have this goal of, okay, great. So if transformation happens instantaneously, my goal is to, how can I learn how to transform anything instantaneously? But it's a journey.
Yeah. I'm really glad you said that, because I think there is also another truth in the journey, in that sometimes you work on the easier things first, and you don't know that, right? Your body, your mind can only handle clearing some of the easier things first. And the more you evolve your understanding, the more you clear your body, the more you work on these different types of emotional mastery techniques, the more you come into contact with some of the deeper, more painful things that have been repressed. So sometimes you've been doing this work for years and years and years, and one of the hardest, deepest, darkest pains, maybe some sort of ancestral or planetary thing comes up, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I've been able to do this so quickly for years, and here I am floored for weeks and weeks and weeks, and nothing I've done in the past seems to be working, right? And if you have even like a teeny tiny grip on your heart, you might hear the whisper that says, it's because you're ready for this one. Maybe you've been preparing for 20 years for this one. I think that's what you're talking about with Tony Robbins as well, this preparation. Because also you see this in medicine. Sometimes there are people that their physical body is just really not prepared to do something unbearably painful yet. It would be like ripping shrapnel through their system. And so they clear the top level, and then the next level. And I think Paul Selig talks a lot about this, the spiritual journey. So it's like we have shrapnel on the bottom of our system, and clearing is like clearing that shrapnel out. And when you get down to the bottom, you know, they're the biggest, hardest rocks in the system. And so you have to be ready for that to move through. And maybe your final deepest rock is the fear of absolute. I mean, it's probably going to go to death and annihilation at the deepest level, meaninglessness, death and annihilation. So yeah, you could be doing this for years and then be flawed like you've never been flawed before.
Absolutely. Maybe, because we're all going to have different journeys. We're all got different purposes.
That's the thing, right? You don't know.
I don't want to box myself in, but there is a certain sense of, okay, well, this keeps happening and I can't seem to stop it. But I just all I do every day is just clear my energy. All I aim to do is be in alignment, no matter what. Now I'm on and off all the time. But the goal for me is to just be as clear as I can be. Also, earlier you mentioned something. I'd love to touch on this quickly as well. Talking about going into working on the deep things and working on the easy things, so to speak. This is also a really fun practice for anybody to do, is actually do work on the easy things on a regular basis, because there are little things that we seem as quite insignificant. There's no point in, I'll deal with it. It doesn't matter. I'll just continue on with life. But there's so much magic in some of these tiny little things. And I'll give you an example. I used to, well, I still do. If, for example, I was just walking through the kitchen and I stubbed my toe, and it's painful, it's sore. Now, in that moment, sometimes you may forget, but if you can remember and you've got tools and you've got something to work with, I would sit down instantly, and you got these thoughts that come up. You idiot, you klutz, I can't believe you did that, you stupid, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff that can come up for us. Now, if we can just straight away clear those judgments straight away about this small thing, and then perhaps you can work on maybe the physical pain, if you have the means to do that. We all have the means to do that, but if you know how to shift that pain as well, because those things are small, you don't have to wait for it to blow up so big. There's a lot of wisdom in that. And as we shift, I stubbed my toe, and then I burnt my finger, you idiot, you shouldn't have done that, you know better, blah blah blah. You clear that too. As you clear all these little things, which then they usually take seconds, if not a couple of minutes, they add up very, very, very beautifully and powerfully, actually, to the point where when you go to burn, you go to burn your finger, you burn your finger, and then you realize, I burnt my finger. I wasn't as present as I could have been. And you instantaneously start to get this message of, I burnt my finger because I wasn't present. That's the only reason I burnt my finger. I stubbed my toe because I wasn't present. But there's no thoughts of, you're an idiot, you're stupid. And all of a sudden you realize, wow, I can go through all of these little small aspects of life, and actually I feel clear in so many more things. So I really think it's a great practice to actually work on these tiny little things on a regular basis.
You're so right here. And I hope people hear that, because most people ignore all the little things. They do not put any time, effort, no thought into it, or no practice into it all. And of course, what then happens is they only decide to turn up and try and deal when it's extremely big, when it gets painful enough, but they haven't developed any skills along the way with the small things. And so it's like being in the Olympics of transformation, trying to throw a shot put so far, but you've never, ever, ever even picked up the ball before when it was easy. So not only is it powerful to do the little things, it means that when something big comes, and it will, because we're human and every person is going to experience big things, you will have practiced. I say this to students all the time. They come to class and I make them go look for things so we can work on them. And people have said before, why do we bring them up here? And I said, because this is the classroom. If you can't handle bringing something small up here and working on it here, how do you think you're going to go out in the world? Yeah, so the little things are so important. And I mean, it just takes a little bit of desire and discipline and a couple of very simple techniques, and you can really profoundly change the way you turn up in this world. And you're right, every little thing that brings up a judgment, when you're looking in the mirror and you judge yourself, when you stub your toe, when, I don't know, if you have a child, you've got 1,000 opportunities a day to do these micro inner reflections and clearings or integrations.
Now, you mentioned Peter Levine earlier, and that was awesome because I read Waking the Tiger many years ago.
Yeah.
And I so recommend this book. This was,
yes.
I often forget about it, but it was so profound. It's so small, so easy to read. And it really transformed my view around healing. And we've keep touching on this subject ever since you mentioned it 10 minutes ago or whatever it was. So I'd love to just unpack it a little bit, because there was a story and I may butcher it a little bit. But if you remember, it's a real story where there was a group of kids and they were inside a cave or something like this, and a load of rocks had fallen down off this cave and closed in the entrance. So basically there are all these kids and maybe a couple of adults inside that were trapped. Basically, they had no idea if they were going to get any support, any help, or anything like this. I don't know how long they were in there, but they did this study where there were some kids who tried to get out, even if it looked like a complete impossibility and a waste of time. And there were kids that just gave up and they just sat there and just admitted defeat. And that was the end of that. They did this study. So later, many years later, I can't remember how they did it, but they basically tested the people that tried to get out. The kids that tried to get out were way more successful, way more resilient, and basically were able to overcome that trauma because of they just tried to do something. They were shifting something inside. The kids that just let it be, oh, I'm fucked, then they actually were the ones that had more PTSD and struggled later on in life. And that story just stuck with me forever. And I was like, wow, okay, so it's that action. Just take action on something, whether you know what it is or not right now. You don't have to get it right. Just be with it, be present with it. And yeah, an amazing book. Highly recommend reading that for anyone else.
Levine's Waking the Tiger. Absolutely agree. If you're in the field of, you know what, if you're a human being, read that book. And in terms of the story, I've heard of the study, and it probably also has to do with the fact that those people who tried sensed some purpose or meaning in it, right? So also Viktor Frankl's book on Man's Search for Meaning, which was a fascinating book, which I have a feeling there's going to be some cross similarities between these two situations. Those people who survived the concentration camps and actually came out and went on to thrive found meaning and purpose in the experience. And they found a way to participate, contribute, even when it was just the most wild thing to be able to do, contribute to the other people there. And they went on to actually live, some of them really fulfilling, thriving lives. Viktor Frankl being one. What an amazing soul. And he said those people who gave up or lost hope, they gave up, they felt like there was no meaning or no purpose to it, they started to die, right? They would die, and even the ones who did survive probably went on to, like you said, similarly have a lot of PTSD and trauma and all sorts of things. So it's that mix of giving your experiences meaning, even the hardest things, being able to derive meaning from it. And that's quite a deep spiritual discussion, because there's no intrinsic meaning in anything. You have to give it meaning. You have to feel that your behavior, your actions is meaningful. Why? Because it brings purpose and meaning to your life. And I would guess that those children who got up to do this thing felt like there was meaning and purpose and a reason. They were motivated to help, to try, you know? And that's important for our happiness and our health. And if you sit there and go, there is no meaning for this, or you perceive yourself to be a victim of fate and there's no purpose in it, you are going to disintegrate very, very quickly. Because you're sharing a study, it's a slightly different one, but I want to share this one too because it's so wonderful. Somebody did a study somewhere to have a look at the internal narratives that most human beings hold on to, and they said in general, human beings hold on to one of three narratives in general. First narrative is a hero's journey story. Hard things happen, but I'm going to find a way to overcome it, to grow, to evolve. I am a hero on a journey, so if that cave falls in and everything's there, I am a hero on a journey. Here are the trials and tribulations, maybe the dark night of the soul, but we're going to meet that and we're going to overcome it. We're going to grow and evolve. They found that every person who identifies as being truly successful has a hero's journey narrative running in their head. The second general narrative is a healer narrative. The healer narrative is I'm here to help and support and look after other people. And it's all about giving and helping and supporting. However, this narrative often leads to people pleasing, sacrificing, burnout. And so there's something that's a little off in the healer narrative when it comes to thriving, happy lives. Third narrative is a victim narrative. This person believes they are a victim of life. They don't feel lucky. They don't feel like things are going to work out for them. They feel like that life is happening to them. It's out of their control, and that most likely it's not going to go well for them. Then they did an extra study on top of this. This is the kicker. They gave a magazine to every one of the people in this study, and they said there are a number of pictures in this magazine. Count them, and then tell us how many pictures are in this magazine. But there's a trick in the study. On the second page, in big black writing, it said there are 42 images in this magazine. Stop counting now. 90-something% of people with the hero's journey narrative saw that second page, closed the book, handed it back, and said, there's 42 pictures in this book. About the same percentage of people in the victim mentality didn't see that page and kept going through it to count, which concludes that depending on your narrative, depending on the story you're giving your life, the meaning you're giving life, you will see opportunity, or you literally will not see it in your field of view. And I think what you all want to see is that the people who have that mentality, have those stories, can give their life meaning in that way, go on to be successful, happy, thriving, more so in general, than people who do not have that narrative, have the victim mentality, will go on to suffer PTSD, depression, sadness, missed opportunities, broken relationships, so on and so forth, in obviously many, many, many different levels of that. So there you go. That's probably what's happening in the cave. It's probably what happened in Viktor Frankl's area, probably what happens in most of us living on planet Earth.
I mean, one of the things you mentioned earlier about when we were talking about space holding as well was you mentioned the words care and kindness and compassion. And it just reminded me, oh yeah, that's so beautifully links with the scientific studies of the HeartMath Institute, for example. You know, they've done these processes where you can do a very simple meditation. I actually got one on YouTube, very simple one. Greg Braden teaches it. You close your eyes and you just take about 3 minutes and longer, depends what you want. And you just really bring into your heart sense of gratitude, appreciation, care, compassion, kindness. These specific words and specific emotions, they transform and expand the heart, and they bring the whole body into a state of peace, and then therefore sends a signal to the brain. The brain then synchronizes with the heart and then creates this heart-brain coherence. And so obviously when there's that pattern of a great space holder that has this element of care, compassion, and kindness, that's actually creating this heart-brain coherence because you're in their field. Your fields are connecting, therefore it's like you're mixing a juice into the water and the color mixes together. I just thought that was interesting. I love connecting dots like that.
Well, let's just add just 1-2 more connections to that exact same thing. When we go into transcendental spaces of oneness, we're talking about this being ultimate truth, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're radiating kindness and compassion. So there are certain meditations and tools and techniques that will get you into that infinite state of non-dual peace, the coldness of nirvana, if you want to call it that. But then the heart-opening practices and meditations, and sometimes life just helps you with this, will help you marry the love and the kindness and the care with these more profound understandings of total truth. And it will start to mix those two truths together. So brain, heart coherence, ultimate truth with relative human truth. Such a beautiful connection. And the reason I'm sharing that is because, at least for a very long time, I was very confused about what the difference was between going into non-dual states of awareness or trying to do some of these more heart-opening experiences like Tonglen, which I found to be an incredibly powerful heart-opening experience. And then I realized, wait, it actually is activating different aspects of the self, and we want to connect those two things. Now, through, let's say, the Hermetic principles, you could almost say that ultimate truth is divine masculine. It's ultimate. It's the container. You could put it in this, state. And feminine, divine feminine, is the compassion, the love, the movement for humanity. So I think that in this, we're seeing the connection of the brain, the heart, of ultimate truth with human truth, with a divine masculine, divine feminine. And when those two seemingly opposite aspects of self come into coherence, you now have something that is bigger than the sum total of the parts. And that is powerful. I don't even want to give what that is a name because it will not do it justice. That is exquisite. Exquisite. I can only say that not only in terms of healing, because that's just one thing that it does. It's exquisite for far more reasons than just that. Healing is an outcome of that connection and just one of many different types of outcomes.
You mentioned parts just then as well. I know you do parts work and you're really passionate about that. I'd love to know more because I feel like I have a certain understanding, and I feel like I've naturally done that over the years in different areas, but I've never specifically studied it. So it could just be one of those things where there's a connection between the two things, but I'd love to hear more specifics and just from you, because I know you love that so much. So can you share a bit more about parts work?
Oh God, I mean, we're in another huge field over here. I'd put parts work in the category of cleaning up and shadow work. So obviously I've studied many different people talking about parts, but the way that I now communicate it is that when we are socialized or traumatized as we come into the world, it's as though our personality is fractured into different aspects of ourselves. And I kind of mentioned this earlier. And then because of how human beings have certain needs that we need to get met in order to survive, we very quickly internally are figuring out, does this get our needs met? Nope, into the subconscious, that needs to go. Does this part get our needs met? Nope, that needs to go over there. Does this part? Yes, okay, bring this forward, this part backwards. And there's a whole internal setup, right? So the way that people could imagine this is that you take a community of many, many, many people and you figure out where everybody needs to go in order for the community to function based on the environment that it's growing up in. We do that inside of ourselves. It has to do with trauma. It has to do with socialization. It deeply has to do with language, which is very interesting. Our language will help us determine this. It has to do with how we store memories. It has to do with how data comes in, is processed through the brain, how we make predictions, and then we go on to live in a world where our brain is trying to keep us safe physiologically. So science, everything is fit in here. Spirituality, science, the whole lot. I'm kind of bringing together huge bodies of work just to be able to say, when we experience socialization and trauma, we shatter into pieces and then we categorize those pieces and we stick what we believe to be dangerous based on experience in the subconscious, and we bring the things that we believe to be helpful in terms of survival and getting our needs met to the forefront of our personality. So internal family systems kind of categorizes these parts into three general areas, which I love. We have 20 different names for all these three categories, and people use them all over the place and say, I've come up with a new method, but it's always the same. You have the personality structure that you show the world. You have the firefighters or the first responders. These would be the parts of you that turn up when you're triggered in order to keep you safe. And then you have the exile parts, the rejected, abandoned, subconscious wounds that are out of the conscious awareness. So then what happens, which is fascinating, is you move through life. And if something turns up in your reality that triggers a past memory of an aspect of yourself that you've associated with trauma or pain, first responder will turn up, and this will look like it can look like many different things depending on how you've created your first responders. So some of them will be angry, some of them will turn up and be manipulative, some of them will turn up and play the victim, some of them will turn up and be hypersexual because that will keep them safe, some of them will retract immediately. There's many different ways the responders turn up, and these are like, okay, cool, that's what a trigger looks like. If you're not being triggered, most of the time you have, I missed this part. You've got your personality, your firefighters, your managers. Managers are like keeping things in control most of the day. So managers are like managers. They're analyzing everything and they're deciding, okay, based on everything that I've witnessed here today, we're going to turn up like this, and this is my general personality. When life puts pressure on us, we start dancing between all these different aspects of ourselves. Wound gets triggered. The system goes, fuck, wound is triggered, send firefighters to the forefront. Firefighters come in, managers step back, and there's a whole dynamic at play here. So parts work is actually the process of going inside and meeting those parts and understanding the dynamic as actual parts of yourself. So you go in and you find the angry part of you, or let's make a really, this is one I've worked with a lot. I can become really aggressive when I'm triggered. I can get really aggressive. I don't love it about, well, actually, that's not true. I'm learning to love it about myself. I've noticed that I can be aggressive. So in a parts work process, I'll go in and I'll meet that aggression. And I'll be like, hey, who are you? And they'll be like, I'm here to protect you. And I'm like, okay, so would you be willing to show me what you're protecting me from? And sometimes you have to negotiate. And it's like, no, fuck no. I'm not going to show you what's there because I'm protecting that. I don't trust you. So you go on this journey of meeting your first responders. And eventually, first responder might step aside and say, this is what I'm protecting. And you see the wound. And there you've got a little wound that's like, I am so scared that no one's going to like me. I'm so afraid in this world. Anytime somebody tells me I'm not doing a good job, I'm so afraid of what that means. So my firefighter comes to the front to protect me. Once you see that dynamic, you go, oh my God, I have a firefighter protecting a wound, and I see how this is playing out in my life. And then the next phase is bringing those two together with you as the witness, and you start to help them understand and renegotiate their relationship. So normally part of this is that wound is a 3-year-old and you're now 36, and you start to renegotiate and say, I understand why at 3 years old, 5 years old, you needed to create an aggressive firefighter, but we're 36 now. Let's go on a journey of renegotiating the dynamic. This is parts work, and it's such a phenomenal, I believe, body of work because it is somatic. You're in meditation usually when you do this. You move between these different parts. So you get to go backwards and forwards and experience the firefighters within you, or the first responders, or your triggers. You get to go in and feel the wounds and understand that. They seem like opposites sometimes. One can be really, 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 really confident while the other one really lacks confidence. So you're doing this dance, right, between the confident and the lack of confidence. And you're realizing, oh my God, I'm both. Which, if you look at Peter Levine's work, is very much like moving between different sympathetic nervous system responses. Parts work, the extra step is that you continuously step out into the witness. Or there's many different types of parts work, but there's also a way to be the witness. So you're activating what we'll call the high self, which is the wisdom. So in this dynamic of parts work, you have shadow work. You have an intellectual journey where you're looking and understanding yourself. So you're engaging, growing up through understanding. You have somatics. You activate high self as well when you get to be the witness. So now we've got a very integrated process. And then I love to bring in all sorts of different tools and techniques now because I play with how do we open our hearts to understand this? How do we bring in the love and the compassion and the understanding? So can we dance through all these different ways to help ourselves holistically heal? And parts work for me plays in all those realms. We can be in waking up, cleaning up, showing up, opening up, all at the same time. When you come out of a parts work session, you then use your intuition and your newfound understanding to figure out what's the next best step I should take in my life. Let's go take that aligned action now. And you can activate the showing up piece in it, which will reset the nervous system, or at least it will begin to communicate to the nervous system there's a change been made, and we're now moving into our physical environment differently than we have before based on the internal understanding. So this is a world of fascination for me in the space of specifically cleaning up the inner world, doing shadow work. So parts work then becomes an ultimate branch. You can do inner child work. You can look for shadow aspects. You can also go, and this is beautiful, sometimes the repressed aspects are beautiful aspects of yourself. You don't just hide things that are negative. You also hide your beauty that you are afraid of. So parts work can also be going and meeting the qualities within you that you've repressed because you're afraid of being so beautiful, so loving, so kind. Because when you did that as a child, you were misunderstood and shut down. So also in the realm of parts work is going and finding your power, going and finding your love. In parts work, what we see is that you have shadows, which are the things that you would say are negative, but you also have light. And that mirrors in relationship. I could keep going for a universe because you judge things in the world, but you're also attracted to things in the world. Deep attraction is also a trigger. Extreme needy attraction is a trigger of the beautiful part of you that's hidden in the shadow. So we can also reclaim those things in parts work and understand, my God, why did I give up my charisma? Why did I give up my love of performance. Why? Because I want that's I'm not allowed to do. Why did I give up my love of money? So all of this is in the realm of parts work, and you can see I definitely light up here because it's creative, powerful. It lights all the aspects of the human being up. It brings understanding. It brings love and compassion. So yeah, parts work is what an incredible body of work. Thank you to every human being who has studied and figured out and brought things forward to make that body of work a possibility for us. That's how I feel about that. All the way back to Freud.
While you're alive and alight, could you possibly share a simple exercise that somebody could do listening to this? Maybe picking 3 parts, so that people feel
Like they
that
can
they
do
can
something.
understand, and just give a little exercise of what someone could do right now.
Let me think of which one I want to give you. I have a particular meditation. I'm really happy to share it with you, and people can go through it, but I can also give you the basic stages of it so you can do it on your own. Stage 1, close your eyes, go into your heart, and imagine a temple. So create a beautiful heart temple space. It can be a physical temple or a nature temple or a galactic temple. And just feel that you have this safe, beautiful heart space. And when you're ready, find a pathway that leads you out of the temple and all the way to a big fence. And this fence is covered in vines because you haven't been here for a long time. So you got to start pulling away the vines, ripping things down, just kind of start to cut through the fence. And finally you find a gate and it's padlocked and there's chains and it's really densely locked. And you put your hand in your back pocket and you realize you have the key. You've always had the key. So you unlock the bolts one at a time, you start pulling the chains off and you yank it down and you start yanking this gate open. And on the other side is something dark, scary, grotesque. You haven't been out here for a long time. And you gotta go in because there's a part of you somewhere in here that you haven't met for some time. And so start walking through this dark, scary, grotesque, unknown space and use your intuition to go and find a part of yourself. You'll find it. It's there. There's many actually in here. And it might turn up clearly or it might turn up metaphorically. It might just be an energy. But trust yourself, whatever you find. And when you find it, the first thing you're going to do is just become aware of whatever you're seeing, and trust yourself, trust your consciousness, your subconscious. Whatever you see, whatever you sense, whatever you feel is correct. And so just look. See how you start to feel when you look. Don't jump to thinking you know what this is. Just awareness. Now, this is an aspect of you. Maybe you're not fully aware of what exactly it is yet, what it represents. So the next thing you're going to do is ask, who are you? What part of me are you? And let it respond. Then ask it what it needs. Because it needs something. What is it that you need from me? What is it that you want from me? So you have this conversation. Now, if you're doing this on your own later, you can spend some decent time here in a conversation backwards and forwards. Who are you? What do you need? How do you feel? How long have you been here? How come you're here? Whatever you need to ask. You can just have this conversation and that can be enough. Or if you want to take it a step further, you can imagine shifting yourself and becoming this part and then answering your own questions and speaking out loud saying, well, I am this and I feel like this and this is what I need. Or I don't know what I need. Or, you get the opportunity to become that part, feel it, and talk to yourself. That you can do that relatively easily. You can do it once, you can do it twice. And then eventually, when you feel ready, you can ask this part, would you like to come back into the heart temple with me? Can I take you out of here and take you back into the heart temple? If it says no, you have to figure out why. Maybe it doesn't trust you. If you don't want to take it back into the heart temple, you have to figure out why. Maybe you're so afraid of it messing up your life. And so you got to negotiate with yourself and find a way to make it okay to walk this part, carry this part, nurture this part back towards the heart temple, out of the darkness, out of the subconscious into the conscious. And as you bring it into this heart temple, serve it like a part of divinity, of God, as a child of yourself. Meet every need. Take it into your heart temple. Offer it a bath, clean clothes, food, love, connection, the best room in the house. And this, as a very simple first step, is an amazing first step. There are many other things we can do, but just this is enough to help people have some really profound realizations about what they're leaving out, but not just what they're leaving out. That journey of bringing those parts back into your heart brings a lot of realization with it. It can be very, very moving as well, because I've seen people break down into tears realizing how mean they've been to themselves. But they understand it, They cannot believe that they're the ones who pushed these parts out. And these are I often say now, it's kind of the exercise, I often say India is a really good representation of how we treat ourselves internally. We make these big temple spaces, and then we push everything that we think is dirty and ugly out. And we hope that if we don't look at it and we starve it, it will disappear. It will literally starve to death and disappear. But it doesn't. It never works like this. So you got to go out of your castle, out of your heart. Never really leave the heart, right? Metaphorically, you go into the streets and you go and find the starving aspects of you. What are they starving for? Love, connection. They want you to hear them. They want you to see them. And then when you're ready, you pick that starving part of yourself up. I don't care how dirty it is. I don't care how disgusting you have perceived it is. The thing it needs is love. And you bring it back into your temple. And the inner process of doing that will give you so much understanding into kindness and compassion and what it feels like to reclaim these parts of yourself. It mirrors into our world, because you'll start to see that in the people. People are just external representations of internal parts. So that's a good first exercise. I can also give you the link to that meditation, which will guide people through it if you would like, because they can do that on their own.
Fantastic. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I'd love to share a bit about my experience too.
Please.
Well, there's two things. First thing is the last thing you just mentioned about the temple. So interesting, in India, for example, when you're pushing this stuff out. Well, I just had a conversation with Ashley Chataway, who does astrocartography. She does energy activations, things like that. She does some amazing work. Another podcast episode, and she was talking about, we got into the topic of entities just for a brief moment, and she was saying that she picked up an entity. I think it was her that picked up the entity or something like this outside, what do you call it, the Dalai Lama, wherever he is. Excuse my ignorance. But outside that, and I was kind of shocked. And then when she explained it, kind of, oh wow, that makes kind of sense. So there's this space of all light and enlightenment, and it's all there, protected and light. But just as you leave the actual premises, for example, that's where all these other forces are there. They're just kept out just on the edges. And I was like, wow, okay, that's really a fascinating thing. I'd never considered that before, because you wouldn't expect to be picking up things like that at such a space. But as you've just said from another perspective, it kind of makes sense now.
Oh, yeah. Things crystallize into entities the more you've pushed them out of yourself. Entities are reject aspects of self. There's nothing outside the self. The deeper you reject it, the more scary it becomes, until it eventually is the devil.
Yeah.
Right? But the devil, and it can actually start to condense and become almost a physical thing that then can attack you. But it's not really. That is your own repressed fear that you've pushed so deeply away from yourself. There's so much power in how much you've pushed it that it now is turning back. And it's not attacking you. It wants your love, which is the wildest thing, because you think it's attacking you and chasing you and wants to do something bad. But really, it's the most starved part of you. That's what I would define the devil as, the most starved part of you, longing to come back into the temple of love. And this is our amazing hero's journey, because you're like, no fucking way could I do that. No, that's the devil. It's going to destroy me. But eventually you realize, no, what's destroying you is not letting it in. Because the only thing that is scary about us is the parts of ourselves that we haven't loved. And they have to be scary to get our attention. Because if it's not scary and it doesn't get bigger and bigger and bigger and more terrifying, we'll never look. So eventually it goes knocking at our door and we're like so scared, oh my God, what's chasing me? But when you deeply go in, people will think I'm absolutely blasphemous for saying this, depending on what level of psychological, spiritual development they're at. But when you truly go in, not only do you realize you are an aspect of me, the deeper truth is you are God, pretending to be the devil, giving me the opportunity to love myself at that level, which allows me to experience what it means to be love. Truly, love at the most holistic level. You want to know what it feels like to be the love of God? Well, then you're going to give yourself a task to love the most unlovable. And what is that? Well, what we create in our imagination is the idea of the devil. So we go on a journey to love the devil within us, which really is just God playing itself in the shadow, giving you the opportunity to re-love itself so that you get to experience what it feels like to love at that level. It's brilliant. It takes lifetimes for people to be brave enough to do this. But that's what it is. You know, the devil does not exist outside of us in some other universe as some evil entity. We created it, which means God created it as an incredible opportunity to come back to loving ourselves. It's just one big love story, I swear to God. Mirrored in hero's journey tales.
It is.
Yep.
You shared something, everything you just shared then directly connects with the story I think I even shared with Ashley in that call as well. So it's interesting how that connected. I'll try and keep it short, but I was in Bali a few years ago and there was a moment, and do you know what the energy is like in Bali? You know,
Yes.
There's a lot of demonic kind of sculptures and things like that in the tradition and the culture. But I remember that at one point I was laying in bed and I felt like I'd just been overcome by dark, heavy, demonic forces, whatever it was. And my process was exactly what you were just sharing. To start with, I was trying to push it away, using everything I could to clear and cleanse it. Nothing was working. And then almost as if it just dropped into my awareness, something I already knew, but it just needed to be reminded me. Oh, tap me on the head right now. Oh, by the way, you do remember that you are all of it, hence the name of the podcast. You are all of it. That means you're the light, you're the dark, You're here to love all of it. If you're afraid of this dark and you're trying to get rid of it, you're trying to get rid of a part of yourself. And in that moment, I switched it straight away. And I decided to just sit there and just work on loving this. And of course, it just merged and it shifted and transformed. And it was just another beautiful. I've had that experience a few times in variations, just as a little reminder to myself. But that was the most significant. And it's like, don't run away from that darkness, because that darkness, the ability to be with that darkness, is your ability to shine way more light.
What a surprise. From a different perspective, it gets very, very simple, because all of these dark parts of us that scare us are like little children who want us to love them. Now, if you were to flip your awareness to looking at yourself and becoming that dark part, all that dark part wants is your love. When you start trying to clear and cleanse, the message you're sending to yourself is, get away from me. I don't like you. I'm scared of you. Go away. Something's wrong with you. I need to fix you. Now, if a partner came to you and was like, I need to fix you, get away from me, something's wrong with you, we need to clear this part of you, like, go away, the feeling of that is agony and devastation and like, fuck you, you're an asshole. And here you are being like, I'm so spiritual, getting rid of all my parts, clearing, cleanse you out, go away, go away. And really these parts looking at you and being like, wow, what an asshole you are. But I understand, because you're at a low level of psychological and spiritual development, no problem. But I'll just keep pestering you until you wake up and realize this is not going to work, because guess what? I'm you, motherfucker. And as long as you're trying to get rid of me, you're going to be in pain. I saw this in a parts work session once, where a guy was looking at two parts of himself, and this was the dynamic, and one part turned around to the other one and said, I'm you, motherfucker. So this cruelty that you're like aiming at me and trying to get rid of me is only backfiring on you, because we're the same fucking person. We're the same fucking being. So keep going until you figure that out, and then pull the knife out of your own heart and start to see that all parts of yourself only want your love. They do not want to be cleansed or gotten rid of. The cleansing thing is to love them. That's what cleansing means, when you become whole again. This has been fun. We talked about so many things.
Very fun. I really, really enjoyed it. I want to ask you 3 questions. What do you want to experience in your life?
Maybe my answer will change in the future, but just because it's at the top of my awareness right now, I actually perceive that the area I'm the weakest in is living with a really open heart. I am deeply intellectual. I love the transcendental stuff. I love going into inner work. To walk around with an extremely open, compassionate, loving heart, more often than not, is something I aspire deeply to feel that unending love towards all of humanity, which I've tasted before, but I want to experience that way more consistently for far more people. And I couldn't imagine anything more beautiful than living a truly awakened, compassionate life. That's what I want to experience. And I want that to go into every element of my life, every minute, my family, my community, everyone I meet when I travel the globe. So that's what I would love to experience. I'm talking real compassion.
Now imagine that you've got everything. You've got all the money, all the emotional balance, all of these skill sets, big open heart. How would you want to contribute from that space?
One of my dreams has always been to create kind of a Hogwarts meets Harvard school of integral full spectrum living, so that people can come in and they can do the experiential work, the intellectual work, the inner work, the opening up work, and then work on their offerings and creation. So I would love to fund more education in this field of whole spectrum living, and I would love to be able to travel and meet incredible people, with bringing my family along and supporting. Yeah, I would start wanting to support people's dreams, their healing, their transformation, their dreams.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Wow, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, Holly.